Hello, hello, everyone, and welcome to In Time. My name is Nicholas Lamar Soutter, and with me today, for her second time out, is Courtney Stewart. Courtney, thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, thank you
So,
for having me.
so
Can
we're
you hear
having some tech. I can, yes, absolutely.
me?
That isn't to say that anyone else can hear you, but hopefully, and yes, I
Oh.
unmuted. Thanks for the. Oh God. Um,
Make sure
so,
that I'm
and
not muted.
what I need to do, we're actually sort of a couple of things quickly before we begin. We made a promise to Landon Knoll when he was on that we would not have YouTube be our sole, the sole place where we broadcast to, or we will be simulcasting to other channels, and it has taken us longer to fulfill that promise than we had hoped. We had said we'd do it at the beginning of the new year, and we unfortunately, it took a little bit longer, but it has happened, and today we are simulcasting to Facebook and to Periscope, while also to YouTube. That is, sadly, we can hear Nick. Okay, okay. Oh, no, no, don't you laugh at that. Aren't you supposed to be defending me? You're supposed to be like,
Yeah,
you
you
can't
said you
say
said
things like,
sadly we can hear Nick.
that's what, that's what
You
he
can't
said.
say
That's
things
what's
that
in.
are funny and not expect me to laugh, man.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Your
Okay,
fault.
I don't get any respect. Yeah, yeah. Admittedly. All right. So we are we we are simulcasting, and that's also one of the reasons for the delay. But we've got that done up and taken care of, and we have integrated chat, so we should actually be getting chat from the Discord, Periscope, YouTube, and Facebook all integrated. So you can comment on any of those platforms; it will integrate, and you can see them on all of them. So that's a huge technical feat. We were just toying with it earlier today. We're like, I think we can be ready to go live, and we appear to be, and that is really a feat. That's entirely on Booleanenator, Booleanenator. I always forget that extra syllable. Who's our producer? So that's just amazing that we got that up and running. So we this is breaking news. Admittedly, depending on how you view it, possibly a little late. He won Nevada yesterday, but the results are finally in. Bernie Sanders has won the Nevada caucus. Now, that's interesting for a number of reasons. I think everybody by this point already, you'll have to excuse me, I'm also trying to get, I had, as we were trying to fix things, I ended up taking down some of the facts and figures that I had available here, and they're not here. So I'll either try to do those from memory or
Oh no.
discuss something else. Well, I know. If it's from memory, we're all kind of screwed. So
Oh.
here's the thing. One of the Bernie Sanders has actually done something pretty amazing at this point, which is he has actually won the big three in the caucus states, which nobody has ever done before. He has won Nevada, New Hampshire, and Iowa. Now, Iowa's a tie, actually, at 26 point something percent with Buttigieg. So he's tied for first. That's never happened. Nobody's ever won all three before. And in Nevada, this was a landslide. It was, if I recall, 47%. The next closest to him is below 20%. And at this point, there doesn't appear to be any clear alternative to Sanders. It's basically Sanders is in one category, and all the rest are fighting for kind of the leftover scraps of
Mm.
the DNC. Nobody seems to be able to nobody else has been able to stand out and differentiate themselves in such a way that there's a clear alternative. They all seem to have, even Warren, who I thought would probably be successful in doing that, has thus far not differentiated herself. Now, she did score in the last debate some pretty big hits against Bloomberg, and everybody thought that would help her. One of the reasons it didn't help as much as it could have is because of early voting. Nevada has instituted early voting for, I believe, the first time ever, and it was sort of a graded voting, so you can see who your first choice, second choice, third choice is. And there was over 77,000 early votes cast before she had her big win in the debate. That's one reason why the candidates are always pushing early voting, is so that if they have a gap, if they try to lock in whoever's vote, just early voting weeks ahead of time, then if anything changes. So she had come in, the exit polls, or not the exit poll, sorry, the polls before suggested that she was going to do stronger. She was still going to be in second place, but they suggested that she would do stronger than she actually did. And one of the reasons is because of early voting. So any questions on any of this so far? I'm still trying to, I'm doing a little dance while I try to find all of my materials here.
Yeah, well, so I've never really commented on politics on the channel, not really. Well, I say the channel on YouTube as a whole. I'm usually commenting on atheism, psychology, and sometimes a little bit of politics. I've had a few words to say about people like Ben Shapiro, Jordan Peterson, things like that. But I don't typically talk about politics as much. Honestly, it's because I don't think I know as much as my previous roommate did. She was a political science major at UTA. So I kind of got a nice little buffer of education from her a while back, but it was funny. We planned on watching the presidential debates back when it was Hillary and Trump, and those debates that were really fun to watch, really disturbing but funny. And we balled up socks in preparation because we knew we would be throwing things at the television. And her husband was like, "You have to use these balled up socks because I like my TV and I don't want you to destroy my TV." So we started a tradition of wine and balled up socks to throw at the TV at what Trump is saying. So that kind of gives you an idea of what my stance is on most of this. But it's been an adventure the last several years of politics, and I think I've become a lot more involved emotionally in politics than I have been in the past. So it's a very deep and interesting topic to me, even though I hardly ever comment on it in these forums. I talk about specific policy topics and things, but I haven't really talked about politics. So yeah, I'm also not at all representing Metroplex Atheists in my political ideas, so that's worth mentioning. Or probably Atheist Edge. So yeah, I'm an individual today with my elephant cup.
Well, I think a lot of people have become a lot more interested in it. I think people on the right became more interested with Trump, and then people on the left have before Trump won, people on the right became far more interested in. He sort of galvanized the right. Now Trump is galvanizing the left. Sanders, the first time around, Sanders got really hosed by the DNC. They didn't want him to win, and the truth is Sanders is an independent, but he can't win as an independent, so he has to caucus with somebody, so he caucuses with the Democrats. But everybody in the Democrats knows he's an outsider. They know he's not really a Democrat. He needs to be part of a party. So they really torpedoed his campaign the first time around, even though every single metric had him doing far better against Trump than Hillary, and this was well before she got the nomination. So they withheld money. They withheld information from what's called Vote Builder. That's how they cut turf and canvas, and they do a great deal more. But that's if you're on the ground. That's what you use.
I remember hearing a little bit about that, of news coming out after the primaries, where there was he should have won, but there was some sly dealings that made her the candidate and then lost us the election. So
well, and so the hope was the DNC would have learned their lesson, but as we've covered previously on In Time, they really haven't, and they were deliberately tanking the smaller candidates like Yang. They appeared to be once again giving Sanders a bit of a harder time, but certainly the bottom tier candidates making it harder for them to have a voice and trying to coalesce around the top tier candidates. Sanders has now become the top tier candidate. So once again, he is the first candidate ever to clinch Nevada, New Hampshire, and Iowa. This is important because it builds momentum. One of the things that happens is we're coming up on Super Tuesday. We will be covering Super Tuesday. We'll be covering the as the polls close. A lot of people are expecting. So Sanders won this by almost half, and they're expecting he may do the same thing on Super Tuesday, which would be rather extraordinary. Now, if one of the things that happens, and you've got the degree in psychology, so I think you're aware of this. People love a winner, and there's another saying too. I suppose nothing breeds hatred like success. But if you start building momentum as a winner, and if somebody is kind of having a hard time deciding between two candidates, they tend to go for the one that they think is going to be more likely to win anyway, because they want to say, well, gee, I voted for the right guy. So momentum going into Super Tuesday. This is how Barack Obama was able to win. When Barack Obama won Nevada, he was able to go from basically third place to this is what catapulted him to first place and ultimately winning the nomination. Sanders appears now to have done that with Nevada, New Hampshire, and Iowa. So this is really unprecedented. Now, Project 538 is a statistical analysis website for a great many things, but usually politics. I love it. I think it's usually very insightful. Yesterday, Sanders was projected to win the Democratic primary. The chances, they had 2 out of 5 that he was going to win, and roughly 3 out of 5 that there was going to be no set winner and that it was going to be contested, and that eventually he'd go. But the question was, who would have the 50% majority delegates needed to clinch the nomination by the time of the ending, by the time it got to the end. And they had projected Bernie Sanders at 2 out of 5. That was as of this morning. An hour and a half ago, it changed to 1 in 2. 46% chance that Bernie Sanders will clinch the nomination on his own, as it is today. That's what they're projecting. About a 50% chance that by the time the primaries are over, he will have a sufficient number of delegates to do this without there being a brokered convention. There is a 2 in 5 chance that nobody will succeed, so that there will be a brokered convention. 40% chance they're saying that nobody will have the 50% delegates required. You get the convention becomes brokered. There's a lot of horse trading. Usually everybody knows who it's going to be by that point, but they're trying to figure out who's willing to trade what in order to take delegates from one to another. But Biden is the third. He's in second place at this point at a 1 in 12 chance. 538 is predicting Biden has less than a 10% chance at this point of getting the number of delegates he needs to win. Bloomberg below that at 4, Warren at less than 1% chance. That's some stunning changes.
Yeah. So you mentioned there kind of being an incentive that people usually have psychologically to go with the winner. I think that there's even more of an incentive when in any election you think that the winner has the most is the most likely to win the ultimate election. And so like if somebody is gaining popularity on one side, then there's even more incentive from there's incentive from the psychological phenomenon of like wanting to be on the right side of history, I guess, or wanting to have backed the right horse. But it's even more so when you're like, oh, is this person is the most likely to win against the political opponents that we have. And then on top of that, I think that this particular election, this one and the last one, is I think one of the most heated things we've ever seen in politics. You hear that it's probably not sometimes from people, and then you hear like, oh no, wait, yeah, this is ridiculous. This is next level. And it's interesting because I haven't been around for that many elections in like being an adult. I'm almost 30. I'll be 30 in a couple months. So it's only been really a few elections that I've been over 18 to participate in. And so this is one of the few that I've actually like followed pretty closely and kind of understand what's happening and what's going on. So that being said, it seems next level to me, but I don't have that much experience compared to a lot of people. But I've heard that it's next level hype and like next level stakes of how much this election matters to people and the implications of that election. And the last election, I felt like mattered a lot because of the Supreme Court nominations, the spots that we knew were going to be opening up, and that, you know, yes, we're electing someone for 4, maybe 8 years, but we're really electing something that's going to affect us for the next 40 years, you know. So that's why that previous election mattered so much. And we saw with Kavanaugh that definitely was the case. So it's disturbing as fuck.
Yeah, no, I think that's a spectacular point. I don't know. I do think Ruth Bader Ginsburg wants to retire. She's dying to retire, but she's not going to give another seat to. So she is holding on, and it's like she will be in the hospital unconscious. Like she ain't giving that up until there's And
we on our side love her for that, but I'm sure conservatives don't. You know, they think that that's bucking the system, I guess, or kind of ducking the system. So if that was a conservative that was holding on until the next election, then I think we wouldn't be as happy about it. But since she is the badass that she is, we absolutely love her. And so yes, hold on, girl.
Well, I think there's a lot of truth to that. This is reasonably common practice. What isn't common practice, and the first thing to ever happen was the poaching of the Obama's pick. So Obama basically had a pick. The Senate stole it in the hopes that they could that they would win the election, and in fact, it gave Trump a pick, and that I think violated the Constitution, and that's never been done before. So that I'm not bitter.
Yeah,
I'm not bitter at all.
That was the Kavanaugh one, right?
Yep.
I remember that because he had someone nominated within his presidency, and then they pushed it back long enough for it to not be instated, and then they just like took it away completely. How the fuck did that happen?
They refuse to have a vote on it. They can schedule a vote whenever they like. Now, the thing I had made an argument for, and I forget exactly what the procedural on doing this, but yeah, the president is allowed to do appointments when they're out of session if they, and I think there was a way he could have actually appointed the judge. He decided not to. And they just held and they refused to gavel out of session, so they'd be on vacation, but they didn't actually gavel out to try to block it. There is so much of politics of what they're. I have to look back at my writing because I wrote an essay on how he could actually do it, but nonetheless, I've forgotten all about that. I gotta look back at it. At any rate,
I guess it turns out I do have a lot of things to say about politics.
Yeah. Wow. For somebody who's got nothing to say.
I've got more than I want to say about TV news and local. I do have so much to say, actually.
It was it's Latin. He who withholds. That's it. He who withholds. He who is silent is assumed to consent. That is a concept in law that if somebody doesn't speak out, then it assumes that they consent with whatever. So okay, you didn't speak out against the murder of the Jews. You are assumed to have in some way consented. That's obviously not necessarily true, but that is a common understanding in the law. And what it was I remember this now. Obama could not bring the judge. Obama nominates a judge, and that judge is appointed with the consent of the Senate. The Senate refused to even hear it, so they didn't give consent or withhold consent. They just didn't hear it. And so the argument I was making was silence implies consent if they haven't, even responded to him within, say, a month. Assume he's consented and just put him on the and he didn't do that. I don't know
Yeah.
why he didn't listen to me. I was
Well,
atting him. I
and
literally was on Twitter. I was actually atting him every day, like just in Latin. And I had all
mm,
these other. I remember that. There was a huge period where I was just
well,
sending cute
and
DMs.
I guess there would have been an insane outcry of overreach there. I would think. But yeah, it's politics has become very obviously divisive, but I think very set in by region, because local television news is something that um, people are locked into with their region. And since the privatization of that, it's very targeted for specific messaging and specific talking points. And so you have this kind of, depending on where you live, you're not only going to believe this thing about this topic, but you're going to live in this reality in terms of what's happening and what the news means and everything. Like all of your surrounding reality is locked into this one narrative. And that's what's really scary about privatization of these kind of news things. And I've talked about this before, just in not on YouTube, but in private. Like there's a sense, I think, among the boomer generation and older, that whoever is at the news desk can be trusted to be an ethical journalist. And that includes, like Fox News and CNN and stuff like that. So even though these are known to be very biased things, I wouldn't put CNN on the same level as Fox News, but in terms of bias, but they're known to have those kind of skews by people that are younger, I think, or people who pay better attention. But I do think that a large part of the watchers of local news television fall prey to it more so because they are from a generation where the newsman was a very respected, trustworthy person who showed ethics. And the nightly news, you got one nightly news that the entire country watched. And so you didn't have these local channels that were privatized and propaganda, basically. And so this has happened over time, but it's like you have this perception among older generations, I think, that, and maybe even younger generations that aren't old enough to know the difference, that there's, you're being fed propaganda and you think that it's trustworthy, balanced, non-biased news from like journalistic ethics stance, and it isn't. And that's what's really sad about it's on both political sides, but I think that it's really sad that a lot of people don't realize what they're getting when they look at TV news, or especially online as well. You've got, of course, the echo chambers of online that are expanded by algorithms and everything. So I could rant about that forever, but that's what's sad to me about that, about TV news, is that it's seen to be better than the echo chamber of the internet, and it isn't.
We should definitely do a show about that, I think. The nightly news was actually a requirement by law, 23 hours of broadcast time that the broadcast channels got for free. Essentially, corporations could broadcast on air, but in exchange they had to do 1 hour of public service, and that was the nightly news. And the problem is nobody ever said you can't monetize that. Once somebody figured out that they could monetize that, that changed everything for the news. So we should definitely cover that.
Should do a show
I'm gonna start.
Yeah,
we need to do, and we actually did do a show with Dr. Misha Griffith on a lot of that, the difference between media in the U.S. and media in the U.K., because all media in the U.K. is actually state-owned, not all media, all broadcast media. So the BBC, and they don't worry about the fact that their news is actually coming from the government. Their government makes their equivalent of the nightly news.
Yeah, that's a slippery slope to China, isn't it?
I think it is, but it doesn't bother them over there. But it does seem to, it has some benefits over. It's a different. So it's the difference between how media evolved in the U.S. and the U.K. based on a variety of factors, including actually, believe it or not, landscape. In the U.S., when you broadcast in the U.S. Over the air, mountains, terrain makes it so that the signal can't go all that far. So you have a wide variety of possible stations that broadcast locally. In Europe, that's much harder to do. If you're in the UK, anything you broadcast can be heard in Germany and other countries, and so it changes everything. But what we should do, and I corrected myself on that. It's not all media in the UK. It's broadcast, so it's over the air media, which includes radio and television. That's just over the air, OTA. So all right, so. Anyways, to sort of wrap this up, Bernie wins Nevada, and the reason that's actually just bigger than sort of any other regular win is because at this point, 538 says that there is a 50% chance that he will have enough delegates by the end of this to clinch the nomination. We will be covering this on Super Tuesday, but I think we'll be looking for that. We'll be looking to see what happens in California. He seems to be doing very well with minorities, especially Latinos. That's a huge demographic. That was 30% of the vote in Nevada that he clinched, and that's going to be a huge part of California. If he gets California, I think that's going to be very big for him. But nonetheless, at this point, it looks like the chances are probably, and again, that's just a 50% chance that he will get sufficient votes to clinch the nomination. That means more than 50% by the time it goes to convention. If he's got 45%, he's still almost certainly going to be the nominee because he just has to get that 5% off of horse trading, and he can do that with any of the others. At this point, Buttigieg, one of these days I'll learn to pronounce it. It's not like I work in broadcasting
I think,
myself.
right?
Buttigieg, okay, I'll take your word for it. And Warren are essentially out, according to 538. They have less than a 1% chance of clinching the nomination. Bloomberg is, I know, Warren.
Oh no.
Warren is Massachusetts. I know, I love her too. She's a senator from Massachusetts. I live in Massachusetts. And Biden is now the only one. She really is. Biden is now at only about a 1 in 12. So, barring anything, I don't think he's the presumptive nominee yet. Presumptive nominee is a term my suspicion is we will be using after Super Tuesday, but we will be covering. We'll be covering this on Super Tuesday.
I'm just doing a little dance for Sanders. Yay!
Yeah. Well, and the other thing was the culinary union actually. The leaders said don't vote for him because they didn't like his Medicare for All plan, and it looks like the vast majority of the members voted for him anyway. So they preferred the Medicare for All.
I was just like,
So all right. So
learn from other countries. The way that our healthcare system works here is obviously not the best one in the world. So let's learn from other countries and what they do, and that is what Sanders is doing. And okay, anyway.
I am concerned, and this is the other. He's already been trolled a little bit. There was the people have been saying, well, geez, he's known about Russian interference with his campaign now for a month, but he was informed by the National Security Office. And he's not allowed to go around telling people this. He can't. He's been informed by the National Security Advisor, but he can't. So now people are saying, "Going, well, if he knows, why hasn't he said anything? If he had said anything, we're like, oh my God, he's betraying national secrets. Only Trump gets to do that."
It's like, don't tell them we already know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I think he's going to have an optics problem because he touts himself as a socialist. He's not in real life, but he is by American standards, so I see it. But we'll get into that.
Yes.
Yeah, democratic socialist. Well, and that's got
not as other. Is a difference.
Yeah. He's there's some historical reasons he may want to avoid that, but it looks like it's going to be him. I think the chances are now 50% at a minimum that it's going to be him. He is not yet the presumptive nominee, but this clinches him easily as the front runner. He destroyed Nevada, again, the first candidate in history to take Nevada, New Hampshire, and Iowa. So I think at this point, it is very much his to lose. We do thank you guys for joining us for this edition of Breaking News. Again, finally, we are simulcasting this. And Courtney, was there anything you wanted to what are your other projects? What are you doing? Anything you wanted to quickly give a shout out to? There's your cats. If you really want to.
Yeah, I don't have any cats on my couch right now. I think they're sleeping.
They didn't dominate this stream. I don't know what happened.
Yeah.
But
they're all hanging out on my bed, I think. But we'll have to talk more about the oh, it's my purse. We'll have to talk more about how the media has covered Sanders and Warren, because I think I'm surprised that Sanders is getting such a reception, just because he is known to be, I think last time he was known to be a little bit more radical. And I think this time around, it was Warren who was sort of painted as the most radical, which makes more sense why she's kind of falling to the wayside versus him, because she was the one we were getting all the sound bites about, Medicare for all and the penny tax, I think, the 2-cent tax that she was going to put on any income that's over like $50 million. So she had these kind of sound bites that became really popularized, and I think people were like, "Oh, she's crazy, so let's not go for that one." And so Sanders kind of looked a little bit less extreme by comparison. And I do think that when you're looking at primaries, most people try to go for as middle ground as they can, because that's more likely to get votes from the other side and to win overall. So it makes sense that this might be his year, because he's seen as a little bit more moderate than some of the other candidates, at least were perceived to be, even if he's not. And that would make sense why he is seen as the better candidate to win the overall day that we're all waiting for. But yeah, yep. One would hope that the Trump supporters would see the light of day a little bit more this year than they did 4 years ago. And it's hard to tell, a lot of them are double down, and there's a lot of psychology to support that one. But yeah, what were you gonna say?
No, I don't think he's actually as viable as he was last time around against Trump. I think this time he's less viable against Trump. That doesn't mean he's going to lose, but I think it's a bigger problem. But yeah, there was the Andrew Yang as VP. I've heard a lot of that. I'm curious
I have heard that. You guys mentioned that last time. I did watch that.
Yep. So I don't know. We'll see. All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us all. Courtney, thank you again for stopping by and being with us.
Can I show off my shirt?
Please.
I'm having trouble. A woman's place is in the revolution.
I like it.
I wore it to the Women's March last year in Dallas. So I wanted to represent.
Nice. All right. Oh, and there was a question about the I'll be in the I will be in the after show Discord, like in just a few minutes. I'll be on the Discord in the voice chat for the after show. We can all hang out and chat there. But until then, Courtney, we'll be seeing you on Tuesday, right? So Tuesday is that this Tuesday is, I believe, Dr. Carrier. Was Jesus real? And so that's going to be 1 hour earlier than our normal broadcast. I know. I can't wait to hear it, because he thinks he's got the proof for why he wasn't. I'm going to run the Hitchens argument by him. Carrier is not impressed by that one. I always like that one. But at any rate, so until then, thank you. Yeah, I like the argument, so it's a really good argument. Until then, I will see all of you guys, or we will see you in 2 days. But thank you all for joining us, and we look forward to catching up with you guys soon.
Yeah.